pelaku usaha syariah di berbagai tingkatan, tapi juga mencakup infrastruktur industri halal dan aspek kelembagaan. Di era revolusi industri 4.0, berbagai inisiasi dan implementasi program pengembangan ekonomi digital syariah telah mampu diwujudkan. Salah satunya adalah pengembangan platform industri kreatif syariah Iqra Indonesia untuk sektor makanan halal dan fashion muslim, baik di dalam maupun di luar negeri berbasis web. Pembentukan kawasan industri halal merupakan salah satu syarat akselerasi sektor industri halal. Kementerian Perindustrian telah mengeluarkan Permen Perin nomor 17 tahun 2020 tentang tata cara memperoleh surat keterangan dalam rangka pembentukan kawasan industri halal. Sektor pariwisata merupakan leading sector dalam pengembangan ekonomi syariah. Ditambah lagi, secara makroekonomi, pariwisata merupakan sektor yang paling efektif untuk mendongkrak devisa Indonesia. Pemberdayaan ekonomi syariah tentunya perlu didukung juga dengan pengembangan sektor keuangan syariah, baik itu peningkatan manajemen likuiditas syariah maupun sumber pembiayaan syariah, baik komersial maupun sosial. Di sisi komersial, terus dilakukan penguatan regulasi dan pengembangan instrumen. Sedangkan di sektor sosial, pengelolaan Waqf terus difokuskan untuk stabilisasi daya beli dan konsumsi, mendukung pembiayaan kegiatan produktif seperti wakaf produktif, efisiensi ekonomi, serta integrasinya dengan sektor komersial seperti instrumen cash wakaf link sukuk. Perkembangan program dan produk riset, asesmen, serta edukasi, ekonomi, dan keuangan syariah secara lengkap disajikan di Island Research and Education. Edukasi melalui jalur formal dan non-formal terus dikembangkan. Selain itu, sosialisasi juga terus ditingkatkan, salah satunya melalui penyelenggaraan Festival Ekonomi Syariah Fesyar dan Indonesian Syariah Economic Festival ISEF. Sejak pelaksanaan kick-off ISEF 7 Agustus 2020 lalu, Fesyar telah diselenggarakan di 3 wilayah Indonesia. Selain Fesyar, menuju puncak penyelenggaraan ISEF ini telah diselenggarakan tidak kurang dari 65 kegiatan, mulai dari International Webinar, National Webinar, Business Coaching, Business Meeting and Matching, Workshop, Talk Show, dan kompetisi nasional ekonomi dan keuangan syariah, serta tidak ketinggalan penyelenggaraan Pekan Wakaf Produktif untuk mendorong sektor sosial syariah. Dalam gelaran ISEF 2020 ini, juga ada exhibition yang diikuti oleh kurang lebih 609 eksibitor, di mana di dalamnya terdapat berbagai fitur yang memudahkan para peserta untuk melihat secara detail serta berinteraksi dan berbelanja berbagai macam produk UMKM syariah. Kami ucapkan terima kasih telah mengikuti kunjungan kami ke berbagai lokasi di virtual platform Indonesia Syariah Economic Festival tahun 2020.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat datang di Indonesia Syariah Economic Festival atau ISEF 2020. Perkenalkan, saya Ciki Fauzi dan saya akan mengajak Bapak, Ibu, dan Sobat ISEF semua untuk berkeliling virtual platform ISEF 2020 yang megah ini. Sobat ISEF juga bisa pantau agenda yang sedang berlangsung dan juga wall of social media. ISEF tahun ini memang berbeda dibanding tahun-tahun sebelumnya karena untuk pertama kalinya ISEF disajikan secara virtual. Dan pandemi COVID-19 ini tidak menjadi penghalang bagi ISEF untuk terus berinovasi dalam melakukan pengembangan ekonomi syariah di Indonesia. Yuk kita jelajahi berbagai kegiatan ISEF di platform ini. Di virtual exhibition ini, Sobat ISEF dan Bapak Ibu semua dapat melihat lebih dari 600 produk UMKM. Pondok pesantren, dan lembaga lain di banyak sektor, seperti healthy and organic food, sustainable fashion, coffee and tea, dan masih banyak lainnya. Untuk bertransaksi, Bapak, Ibu, dan Sobat ISEF nantinya dapat melakukan pembayaran melalui e-commerce atau mengagendakan bisnis meeting dengan eksibitor. Saat ini saya sudah berada di salah satu booth exhibition, yakni Healthy and Organic Food. Nah, Bapak, Ibu, dan Sobat ISEF, bisa mendapat berbagai suguhan pilihan makanan maupun minuman yang sehat serta organik. Selain itu, produk pastinya sudah melalui uji klinis dan yang paling utama ialah sudah pasti halal. Nah, terdapat lebih dari 15 kategori di booth ini yang bisa Sobat ISEF dan Bapak Ibu pilih. Seperti rendang dan gudeg, tepung, madu, coklat, cookies, frozen food, seafood, dan lain sebagainya. Contohnya nih ya, ada ini nih, Broko Premium Coconut Sugar. Nah, bila Sobat ISEF dan Bapak Ibu ingin membeli produk-produk exhibition, dapat langsung klik link e-commerce atau chat aja langsung ke kontak penjualan di masing-masing halaman eksibitor. Saat ini saya berada di booth selanjutnya, Coffee & Tea. Di sini, Bapak Ibu dan Sobat ISEF dapat menemukan berbagai kopi dari banyak wilayah di Indonesia. Baik Robusta maupun Arabica, baik kopi khas Aceh sampai dataran Sulawesi. Semua ada di sini. Contohnya, produk dari Bali Arabica ini. Nah, bila Sobat ISEF dan Bapak Ibu ingin mendapat berbagai produk fashion muslim yang mengedepankan aspek sustainable dan lekat dengan kearifan lokal, tapi tetap modis, berbagai eksibitor di sini siap kasih berbagai pilihan produk. Tidak hanya berfokus pada pakaian wanita, kebutuhan fashion pria pun tersedia. Beragam jenis produk dapat ditemukan di sini, seperti batik maupun kain tradisional lainnya, tenun dan ready to wear. Nah, salah satu produk yang saya ingin rekomendasikan ialah Sakinah by Tifa Kaisti. Produk-produknya tidak hanya modis, tapi juga terdapat unsur tenun khas Riau dan dalam produksinya melibatkan pemberdayaan masyarakat. Di tengah kondisi saat ini, tentu Bapak Ibu dan Sobat ISEF perlu berbagai asupan alami yang dapat membuat tubuh selalu sehat. Jangan khawatir, sebab di booth Agriculture, Herbs and Spices ini, Bapak Ibu dan Sobat ISEF bisa mendapat banyak pilihan produk terjamin. Contohnya, ada produk pertanian dari Pondok Pesantren Al-Ittifaq dari Bandung, Jawa Barat. Produk sayur mayur diproduksi dengan teknologi pertanian terkini yang modern. Selanjutnya, buat para kaum hawa, jangan sampai terlewat booth Ethnic Craft and Cosmetic. Di booth ini, Sobat ISEF dan Bapak Ibu semua bisa melihat berbagai kerajinan tangan maupun kosmetik dari daerah-daerah di Indonesia yang punya keunikan masing-masing. Bapak, Ibu, dan Sobat ISEF bisa kunjungi produk-produk unggulan dalam bentuk 3D di booth ini. Semisal Lorokenes yang merupakan produk tas anyaman kulit asal Jawa Tengah. Bapak, Ibu, dan Sobat ISEF, bagi yang sudah rindu traveling di Indonesia, tahan dulu. Kita jelajahi destinasi unggulan yang ramah Muslim lewat bus Muslim Friendly Tourism. Di destinasi-destinasi ini, para Muslim tidak perlu lagi takut untuk mencari makanan yang terjamin kehalalannya. Juga aspek lain seperti higienitas, semua sudah terjamin. Bapak, Ibu, dan Sobat ISEF semua, kali ini di booth Islamic Boarding School, kita bisa menemukan hasil karya produksi terbaik dari sekolah-sekolah dan pondok pesantren di Indonesia. Jadi, mereka tidak hanya sekedar menuntut ilmu agama, namun juga membuat produk-produk yang bermanfaat dan menghasilkan. Pastinya semua telah melalui uji klinis dan yang paling penting, kehalalannya bakal terjaga. Bagi Bapak, Ibu, dan Sobat ISEF yang baru ingin memulai bisnis dengan menerapkan prinsip ekonomi syariah, di booth Islamic Commercial Finance ini menjadi tempat yang tepat. Pasalnya, terdapat puluhan bank berbasis syariah yang dapat menjadi solusi keuangan kita. Berbagai pertanyaan Sobat ISEF terkait pembiayaan syariah dapat ditemukan jawabannya di sini. Setelah mendapat informasi terkait pembiayaan syariah, Bapak, Ibu, dan Sobat ISEF semua dapat mengeksplorasi aspek ekonomi syariah lain melalui booth Islamic Social Finance. Tidak terasa Bapak, Ibu, dan Sobat ISEF, kita sudah berada di booth terakhir Virtual Exhibition ISEF 2020. Di booth ini, Sobat ISEF disuguhkan berbagai aplikasi edukasi muslim dan pembelajaran yang memiliki fitur khusus produk halal dan fashion muslim. Caranya tentu mudah, untuk bisa berbelanja atau mencoba aplikasinya. Langsung klik dan Bapak Ibu beserta Sobat ISEF akan diarahkan langsung ke halaman terkait. Nah, saya tadi sudah mengajak Bapak Ibu dan Sobat ISEF semua untuk berkeliling ke 10 Island Virtual Exhibition ISEF 2020. Terima kasih sudah ikuti perjalanan saya kali ini dan jangan lupa segera kunjungi virtual platform ISEF 2020 dan beli berbagai produk dalam negeri yang kualitas serta kehalalannya terjamin. Langsung registrasi dan jelajahi keseruan berpetualang di virtual platform ISEF 2020. Akhir kata saya Ciki Fauzi dan saya pamit undur diri. Terima kasih banyak dan sampai jumpa di lain kesempatan. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dadah!
Dalam rangka mendorong pengembangan ekonomi syariah, Bank Indonesia bersama kementerian dan otoritas yang tergabung dalam Komite Nasional Ekonomi dan Keuangan Syariah, serta berbagai stakeholders ekonomi dan keuangan syariah, kembali menyelenggarakan ISEF ke-7. Pandemi COVID-19 memberikan dampak yang sangat luas, tidak hanya krisis kesehatan, namun menyentuh berbagai sisi sektor kehidupan, termasuk sektor ekonomi yang terdampak luas. Untuk meminimalisir hal tersebut, berbagai usaha dan kolaborasi telah dilakukan oleh pemerintah dan berbagai lembaga negara. Hal tersebut dilakukan melalui penyesuaian anggaran belanja di berbagai sektor dan penerbitan kebijakan bauran lainnya untuk memperkuat stimulus ekonomi. Penguatan kelembagaan juga dilakukan oleh pemerintah untuk mendorong ekonomi dan keuangan syariah melalui perubahan fungsi KNKS menjadi KNEKS agar pengembangan sektor keuangan syariah juga dapat dilakukan beriringan dengan pengembangan ekonominya. Koordinasi di antara kementerian dan lembaga terus ditingkatkan agar kebijakan yang ditempuh bisa memberikan dampak positif yang sesuai dengan kondisi di lapangan. Dunia pesantren dan berbagai penggiat usaha syariah berikhtiar dengan inovasi melalui penerapan usaha berbasis protokol COVID-19, mendorong produk ketahanan pangan dan mengembangkan renewable energy. Pemasaran berbasis teknologi digital dilakukan agar penyediaan produk halal dapat dipasarkan secara luas dengan harga terjangkau. Ekosistem keuangan syariah dikembangkan melalui berbagai penerbitan produk keuangan syariah seperti cash wakaf link sukuk, bank wakaf mikro, dan realisasi kur. Pada keuangan sosial syariah masyarakat secara berbondong-bondong menyalurkan zakat, infak, sedekah, dan wakaf atau ziswaf untuk membantu masyarakat yang kekurangan. Seluruh hal ini dilakukan agar manfaat pengembangan ekonomi dan keuangan syariah dapat dirasakan oleh seluruh komponen ekonomi bangsa. Ikhtiar demi ikhtiar terus digelorakan oleh seluruh elemen bangsa. Kebijakan yang adaptif, inovasi pada sektor usaha dan keuangan syariah memberikan kita semangat untuk terus bekerja sama dalam kebaikan. Dalam rangka mengoptimalisasi dampak positif kerjasama yang telah dibangun oleh seluruh pemangku kepentingan, Bank Indonesia bersama dengan KNEKS menciptakan sebuah platform terintegrasi, yaitu Indonesia Syariah Economic Festival atau ISEF dan Festival Ekonomi Syariah atau FESYAR yang dapat mengakomodir terbentuknya silaturahim yang erat di antara regulator, profesional, pelaku usaha syariah, unit usaha pesantren, korporasi domestik dan internasional, komunitas masyarakat, dan akademisi. Diharapkan dengan bertemunya seluruh komponen tersebut, tujuan menjadikan Indonesia sebagai salah satu pusat ekonomi dan keuangan syariah dunia dapat terwujud. Saat ini, ISEF telah memasuki penyelenggaraannya yang ketujuh, yang telah berhasil meraih pencapaian positif pada bidang ekonomi dan keuangan syariah Indonesia, terhubungnya pelaku usaha syariah dengan investor, dan peningkatan literasi masyarakat. Mulai tahun 2017, ISEF selalu diawali dengan kegiatan FESYAR di 3 daerah, Sumatera, Jawa, dan Timur Indonesia. Pelaksanaan ISEF dan FESYAR kali ini dilakukan dengan konsep yang berbeda dari tahun-tahun sebelumnya, yaitu menggunakan format virtual. Rangkaian ISEF 2020 akan mulai dilaksanakan pada bulan Agustus dan puncaknya pada bulan Oktober 2020. Mari melangkah bersama ISEF 2020 menjadikan Indonesia sebagai pusat ekonomi dan keuangan syariah dunia.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you. Good morning, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the public exposure technical notes of Waqf Core Principle for Risk Management. On behalf of ISEF 2020 Committee, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us virtually, and we appreciate you taking time off of your busy schedule to join us this morning. We hope you will find the program that we have lined up for you to be fruitful and engaging. My name is Didi Mangrejo, and I'm truly honored to be your host today. We have a monumental agenda ahead of us today, where we will begin our public exposure by an opening remark that will be delivered by Mr. M. Anwar Basori, Head of Department of Islamic Economic and Finance, Bank Indonesia. After the opening remark, we will listen to a recitation of the Holy Al-Quran. And then our lead discussion for today, Dr. Dadang Mulyawan, will take the screen and introduce our prominent speakers as well lead us into discussion. To contribute to the discussion, we would like to invite all participants to submit all of your questions through the Zoom chat, and our lead discussion will ask them to our speakers. And now, let us welcome to our screen Mr. M. Anwar Basori, Head of Department of Islamic Economic and Finance, Bank Indonesia, to deliver the opening remark. Mr. Anwar Basori, the screen is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Speaker, Dr. Imam Teguh Sabtono, Vice Chairman of Indonesian Waqf Board, Mr. Zainul Abidin, CEO Waqf South Africa, Profesor Dr. Radiata Sukmana, Airlangga University, Dr. Dadang Mulyawan, Vice Rector, International Islamic University of Indonesia, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, allow me to start this remark by inviting all of us to praise Allah SWT, God Almighty, the most gracious and merciful, that with His blessing and permission, we can assemble this morning to participate in the event of the public exposure of the Waqf core principle. Salawat and salam are always conveyed to Rasulullah SAW, the leader of the Prophet, who has brought us from the darkness to the path of light. I would like to congratulate to the International Working Group of Waqf Core Principle, who is in collaboration with Bank Indonesia, has been tirelessly organizing this event. I would also like to express my appreciation to my sincere gratitude to the Honorable Speaker, who will their notably experience and valuable point of views. It is truly a great pleasure for me to be able to welcome you all to this event. I truly hope that this event will make a real contribution in economic development effort, especially Waqf management. Economic development program is set by the government to deliver prosperity to the society in every country. In coordination with the relevant ministry and other financial authority, such as the central bank and supervisor of the financial institution, the government has been trying to maintain sustainability in the economic development and stability of the financial system. Despite colorful general feature of the economic development, disparity in the society become a major issue in almost every country in the world. Moreover, the outbreak of the COVID-19 has led to the increase of the poverty and resulted in the wider gap between the rich and the poor. The alternative mechanism that is capable to constantly minimizing the gap has become urgently needed. Islam has the Judean spirit in promoting economic justice and equality through the implementation of the economic distribution mechanism through Islamic finance. Islamic finance does not only consist of the commercial sector, such as the prohibition of the riba, gharar, maisir, darar, but also consists of the social sector, such as zakat, infak, sadaqah, and awqaf. Awqaf instrument has become more important lately due to its role in the economy. In this regard, Awqaf fund has been utilized from the land or graveyard, but also can be used in a more productive manner. In order to provide the best result, Awqaf funds should be managed in accordance with governance supported by the right regulation. Indonesia, Awqaf Board, Badan Waqaf Indonesia, has the Awqaf Act number 41 year 2004, which include Awqaf management and the development of Awqaf asset in Indonesia only, while the source of Waqaf asset also come from the overseas. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the initiative to establish standard for Waqf operation, Waqf core principle that can be applied in a Muslim country around the world. The ISDB, in a collaboration with the Bank Indonesia and the relevant authorities of Waqf in some OIC member countries, have initiated the formulation on the standard and was launched the World Bank IMF meeting in 2018 in Bali 2 years ago. By this annual meeting, we have witnessed for the first time that Islamic economic and finance will be particularly discussed as the global agenda and one of the largest and influential events on finance and economy. The The poll emphasized the importance of the maintaining or keeping public confidence high, since the system is fully dependent upon the propensity is donate. Through the well-organized Waqf system, supported by the information technology and compatibility with other programs, Waqf system can be expected to serve the additional vehicle of fund mobilization to support, complement significantly to the government economic development program, particularly to those with related the poverty reduction program in improving human development. The Waqf Quorum Principle is standard that provide clear and standard systematic on the supporting element on the worldwide applicable Waqf system. The standard is also positioned to ensure compatibility with the mutual recognition of other financial sector prudential standard, as well as the latest regulatory standard that promote governance aspect. The Waqf Core Principle plays the operational standard and supervision on the Waqf sector at the same prudential level as that of other financial sector. Operational standards are prepared to consider the risk-adjusted measure based on the managed asset class and optimization of the benefit for the community. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, going forward, to increase the role and contribution on the Islamic economic and finance globally and nationally, we need active role from all of us, policymakers, economic actors, as well as the academia from across the globe. Bank Indonesia is always ready to coordinate unifying steps related to development of the Islamic economy and finance. Hopefully, our vision in creating economic and finance environment with its very inclusive, growing proportionally, as well as sustainably, can be realized in the near future. On that regard, I hereby declare the public exposure of Waqf Core Principle is officially open. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. May Allah the Almighty bless our truthful intention and sincere effort. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mr. Anwar Basori, for the opening remark. Before we start our discussion this morning, let us all now take time to listen faithfully recitation of Holy Al-Quran by Ustadz Sunarto.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وأقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة لهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون صدق الله العظيم.
And lead us through the public exposure, technical notes of Waqf Core Principle for Risk Management. Dr. Dadang is an economist with research interests in the area of regulatory and supervisory framework development, financial and economic policy analysis, assessment of financial risk, microfinance, and poverty alleviation and Islamic finance. With an economic doctoral degree from Loughborough University in UK, Dr. Dadang is currently Vice Rector II of International Islamic University of Indonesia, while also serving as the Director of Bank Indonesia. Dr. Dadang, the time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Respected audience, Excellency Bapak Anwar, good morning to all of you. Alhamdulillah, today we will have another interesting program on Waqf development, which particularly aiming at developing the operational capability of the Waqf operation, particularly in the area of risk management. So as we all know that Awqaf sector is a sleeping giant capable of helping the government to improve the quality of economic development, particularly in the area of poverty alleviation, and most importantly, in improving the competitive edge of the nation. We can see and the opportunity. Let's just imagine if we have thousands of free hospital, free education, schools, and etc. And then we can see the burden will be uplift by this very important institution, and be together with the government, and as a part of government, we can get the advanced Indonesia and also Muslim in the world. Alhamdulillah, in this session, we will have three very prominent scholars, Professor Raditya from Airlangga University, and Brother Zainul from South Africa, and Dr. Imam, also from Indonesia. In this public exposure, we will divide the section into three. The first, we will talk about the background that will be presented by Professor Radit. And then secondly, about the applicability of the technical notes as the derivation of Awqaf core principle by Brother Zainul. And then what would be the impact and potential impact by Dr. Imam Sabtono. And we have also Dr. Dar with us that will also give the comments. Four of them are members of International Working Group for Awqaf core principle formulation, and inshallah it is just maybe, if not the first, second step of a 1,000-mile journey. It is a long-term project that have to live with us, and we have to also always develop the program. If we can first invite Dr. Raditya Sukmana, he is a professor at the Airlangga University, particularly in the Faculty of Economics. He's got the master degree from Georgia State University in 2002, and then also PhD in economics from International Islamic University Malaysia in 2010. Okay, can we invite Brother Professor Raditya, please? Good morning, Professor Radit. So how are you today?
Good, alhamdulillah. Can you hear me clearly, Pak Dadang?
Of course, yeah, loud and clear.
Good, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, today we invite you to tell us about the background, why this technical note is so important, and then so relevant to our aim to develop very prudently as well as progressively about the Awqaf institution, not only in Indonesia, not only in South Africa or Bahrain or Australia, but also across the globe. Time is yours, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak Dadang. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. Thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessing given to us so that we can gather here in a good condition. Let us not to forget salawat and salam for our beloved Prophet.
Professor Radit, yeah, your sound is a little bit, slow. Can you speak a little bit louder? Yes. Louder.
Is it okay now?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Pak Dadang. Keep inform me when you hear me slow or full. Inform me whenever my voice is not clear. The Honorable Bapak Anwar Basori, Head of Sharia Economics and Finance Department, Bank Indonesia. Thank you for inviting me, Pak. Honorable Speaker, Bapak Dr. Imam Sabtono from National Waqf Board, Brother Zainul Kaji from Waqf South Africa, Dr. Hisham
Put the microphone a little bit closer to your.
Okay. Okay, now.
Yeah, better.
Dr. Hisham Dafdada from Waqf Expert, Australia, and Bapak Moderator, Pak Dadang, and not to forget my close colleague from New Orleans, Prof. Kabir Hassan. I saw her name in the participant in a Zoom meeting this morning. Okay, just like Pak Dadan said that I'm going to talk about the background and the development why this technical notes of Waqf core principle is important. Next slide, please. Okay. As has been mentioned by Pak Anwar and also Pak Dadan, that Waqf is important, is part of the Islamic economics and an important tools or instrument for socio-economic development in the country, right? So Islam is not only spiritual, but also Islam teaches about how we can cater our attention for social and economic in the country. So in social, we mean health, education, and also economics, how we can develop the small, medium enterprise. You know, Waqf has proved, it was proved to be an important engine for the Islamic countries in the past, right? Like, you know, Al-Azhar University is huge.
Sorry to interrupt, Pak Radit. Maybe will it be better to just put off your headset?
Okay, now clear?
That's clear.
Is it clear now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry for the technical problems. Okay, in the past, in the Turki Usmani as well as during Al-Azhar University, they have a lot of huge Waqf assets, right? And there was a backbone. I mean, the Waqf was the backbone for the socio-economic at that time. However, Waqf was down for quite some time, but it gains more attention in the recent years. So if we look at the many countries, and especially in Indonesia, Waqf asset in the form of empty land, small mosques on the top of Waqf land are abundant in numbers. But those land needs to be utilized for productive purposes whenever possible, right? Currently, still empty land and not productive. Next. So if we look at some of the instrument in Islam, zakat and Waqf, you see this has two different characteristics. In zakat, see zakat is for consumptions, and Waqf assets, the asset has to be intact, has to be maintained, right? And profit from Waqf can be for anyone, and zakat for 8 asnaf. So because Waqf has to be, the Waqf asset has to be intact, the asset has to be remain intact, then it needs a more management. It means extra effort how to maintain and create a productive from the Waqf assets. For that reasons, right, there should be extra proper governance, right? Extra proper governance to ensure that Waqf asset is maintained, right? So currently, right, if we look at the banking sector, there is an institution's standard setting body called BIS, Bank for International Settlement, which produce bank and core principles for governing the banking. And also we have that for Islamic, but for Islamic banking, the institution is called International Financial Service Board. That institution is governing for Islamic bank. Next, please. But do we have standard which universally accepted for the Waqf? So far, no. Or do we have the standard setting body universally accepted for Waqf governance? So far, no. So in this case, Bank Waqf Indonesia, Indonesian Waqf Regulator, and Bank Indonesia initiated, and also the IDB, we have a few times discussions to initiate Waqf governance standard, and we call that Waqf Quorum Principles, which was eventually launched, as has been mentioned by Pak Anwar, in the World Bank IMF annual meeting 2 years back in Bali. Next. So this is the news which I got related to the event 2 years back, where Bank Indonesia, of course, BWI as Indonesian Waqf Regulator, IRTI IDB was there also to launch the core principle, Waqf core principle, as well as the cash Waqf being sukuk by Indonesian government. Next. So WCP or Waqf core principle is the guidelines for the Waqf industry to ensure that the smoothness of the Waqf operations. So WCP is important for the Nazir institutions. In the case of Indonesia, where Nazir is not only government-owned, but private Nazir can be established, not like other country like Malaysia. The Nazir is always in government, but in Indonesia, Nazir can be a private sector. So this guideline also important for the regulators, of course, for the Waqf policy. In order to develop this Waqf core principle, we do not reinventing the wheel. So Waqf core principle adopt whatever exists in the standardizations of the finance industry, we can adopt as long as it's Sharia compliance and as long as it is good for the Waqf development. That's why in this context, Waqf core principle adopt what has been universally accepted governance for banking industry, namely Basel core principle, with of course with some adjustment. So we adopt the principle of Basel core principle (BCP), which is still relevant for the Waqf governance. For example, the role of regulators. It has been explicitly stated in the BCP, Basel core principle, and that is also important, also for the developing the Waqf industry. So this kind of principle we can adopt for the Waqf core principle. So we omit those which is not relevant. Next. So this is the Waqf core principle. If you see the participants from IRTI, IDB also there, and of course Bank Indonesia and Indonesian Waqf Board, and also Zainul Kaji, Alhamdulillah, he is here right now after in this Zoom meeting. He's also involved in this Waqf core principle. Also Dr. Hisam Dardar from Waqf Australia. So this has been launched in 2 years back in Bali. Next. So if you look, okay, let me just read maybe a few of these. If you look on the left is a Basel core principle, and on the right is a Waqf core principles. Some of them, like I said, we still keep adopt. For example, like powers. Powers in this case is powers for the regulators. And that's also important for Waqf industry. So we still take this principle for the Waqf core principle. And also, if you look at on the right, Waqf core principle number 2, there is asset classes. We see WCP number 2, asset classes, because there is no asset classes in the Basel core principle. Asset classes is important because we have many kinds of assets in terms of Waqf. For example, cemetery, right? Cemetery, and also we know that Zamzam Tower is also developed on top of Waqf land. So we have various kinds of assets in terms of Waqf, and we should define that as the asset classes, because you know the Nazir has to have a different specialities, expertise in managing different kind of Waqf assets, right? And also permissible activity, of course, we adopt from Basel core principle, but we add the Sharia compliance issues in this context, right? And also with regard to reporting, also that's important. This is for transparency, to convince the Waqf and so on. So this kind of supervisory reporting, we still keep adopting from Basel. Next. Okay, like on the Basel core principle, there is a corporate governance, and so also that is also important for developing Waqf industry. So we adjust that corporate governance into good Nazir governance, right? And also risk management process in the Basel core principle, that is also important. So we also adopt WCP number 14 is a risk management. if you look at the Waqf principle number 14 onwards, 14, 15, and so on, many of these is regard with the risk management. And this will later on develop into the technical notes that we are doing right now. So this technical note is focusing on the risk management of the Waqf core principle. If you look at this number, WCP number 14, risk management, 15, collection management, and also many of them are related to the risk management. We put stress on the risk management because, again, the characteristic of Waqf is the asset has to remain intact. That's the basic of Waqf, in which the extra proper governance has to be exist, right? In order to ensure that Waqf asset is there. And also the operational risk on the bottom, with the BCP on the left, 3 lines from bottom, operational risk. That is also important in the context of Waqf, because you know, daily they will face a problem, various kind of possible problems like legal and also human resource and so on. So we put that as another important kind of risk within the Waqf core principle. Next. So now we talk about the development. If you look at the current development of the Waqf, we have now blockchain, Waqf blockchains. So if the Nazir is not accommodating what has been existed in the current development of socio-economic, then they will be left behind. So the future of Waqf institutions will be largely determined by the ability of the Waqf managements. They have to have an open mind. They have to have to look into what will be the best practices of the Waqf managements outside. They can also look or learn from the endowment institutions elsewhere, which has been adopted by some best schools in the US, like Harvard or MIT and so on. They have a huge amount of endowment fund, whereas endowment fund is almost similar with the Waqf, whereby the asset has to remain intact. So again, I need to stress again that since the Waqf asset has to be prevented, then it requires element of higher skill of risk management. So of course, Waqf sectors can benefit from the development in the banking sector and also the financial market. Next. So currently, many Waqf institutions are still in the shape of simplicity, right? This regulatory framework will accommodate the basic principle which can be adopted by any of the Waqf institutions, right? Any of the Waqf institutions. We focus on the risk management for the technical document, and this technical document which are able to translate sound supervisory concept into the operational risk management within the Nazir institutions. Next. Okay, the objective is, you see, the objective of this technical Waqf core principle is that to provide technical explanations. If you look at the Waqf core principle, is a list of the things which need to be considered for the standardizations. But how is the technical explanations? There is a need to have technical notes for the Waqf core principle. So that's why this TM or technical notes is to provide the technical explanations of the WCP, and also to provide technical guidance to the supervisors to determining supervisory measure to minimize the possible agency problems. Next. So if you look at this figure, you look at the left, first is mobilizations, management and distributions. Think about the Nazir institutions. Mobilizations means to raise funds. But what are the lists involved in the raising funds? So our discussion, a few times discussion with the experts, we come up with the 3 risks. With management, management is how do we manage the Waqf assets, right? And also the distributions. How do we distribute the profit obtained from the productive Waqf? In this context, the managements, we divide into 2. So commercial and social. Of course, commercial is to gain profit. Social is non-profit, like mosques, schools, and others, right? Commercials, to gain profit, we divide again two things, investment and non-investment. The investment one is that cash Waqf for the financing, right? That is for investment. And non-investment is the productive Waqf, generate income, but not in the form of financing. For example, like a hotel, luxurious hotel, like in Zamzam Tower. On top of the Waqf land, there is a Zamzam Tower. There are, I think, 7 or 8 brand name hotel there, and it generates profit, a lot of profit, and that profit is generated and aims to cover the expenses of the 2 mosques, Masjidil Haram and Masjid Nabawi. So that kind is a non-investment. So commercial has a 2-part, investment and non-investment. Investment is just like the financial institutions where the institutions, the Islamic financial institutions, give financing. But this financing is coming from the cash Waqf. So next. Okay, just want to repeat. Mobilization is to raise Waqf assets. Management is to manage Waqf assets. Distributions is distribute profit from the Waqf. And this commercialization, commercial and social, is coming from management. Commercial is investment and non-investment. Investment is cash Waqf financing. Non-investment is productive Waqf assets. Social investment is non-profit, mosques, schools, etc. So we list down all the possible risks within those classifications. Next. So, for example, in the way we do this technical note, the way we do the risk, the identification of the risk, we define, after we list down the risk, then we do the risk management process, which include the identifications, measurements, mitigations, monitoring. So 4 of these, right? So, for example, in the mobilizations, reputation risk. So how do we identify the reputation risk? So reputation risk is when a company mistakenly announces public informations, mistakenly announce public information. It may adversely influence the people perceptions, which eventually jeopardize the reputations of the institution, the Nazir. So that is the identifications of the reputation risk. And how do we measure this reputation risk? So the way we measure the reputation risk is by getting the feedback from the people. What is the comment of those people, any people who have interactions with the Nazir? How is the comment? Positive, negative? And we look into seriously the negative comments for the self-improvement. And how do we mitigate the reputation risk? One way is to establish the public relation divisions to ensure the smoothness of the communications. So this is the way we mitigate the reputation risk. Monitor with the recording the important notes for the future improvement. So these 4 were done to explain the reputation risk. Next. So management, counterparty risk. Counterparty risk means that if Nazir do not have the expertise, then Nazir has to appoint another party who is expert in that field, right? But what happens if, let's say, you have a lot of cash Waqf and you want to ask the fund manager to develop for the portfolio management to gain profit? You ask someone, fund manager, but what if this fund manager giving you a low return, where a low return, which later on you distribute to the social purposes also in a low amount of money. So that is a risk, right? So low return obtained from the investing of cash wakaf can also be the risk. So this is the identification. How do you measure? The measurement is that you have to put the tolerable losses need to be taken, right? You have to state it, what is the tolerable losses to this fund manager, and how to mitigate. And in terms of mitigations, then there is a way to have more than one counterpart, right? Don't put your eggs in one basket. So don't put your money to only one fund manager. You can put in different fund managers. And monitoring criteria to choose certain counterparties shall be monitored. So these are the management process within the counterparty risk. Next.
Radit, kindly reminded that your time is only 5 minutes left.
Yeah, it's almost finished. I think 2 or 3 slides left. The distribution risk identifications. What is the distribution risk? Is the priority. This is a risk raised on the disbursement to the beneficiaries, right? Different with the zakat 8 asnaf, wakaf can be anyone, but priority has to be there. And the standard operating procedure has to mention how is the priority for the mawquf alai. And the measurement, we can look into the negative effect for the communities which are not receiving benefits. Mitigations, regular evaluations to come up with the most priority. And monitoring, monitoring specifically on the all possible effect once discourse has been done. Next. Next, please. Okay, this is my last slide. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Back to you, Pak Dadan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor, for a very thorough and comprehensive presentation. And we can see that, so much to learn for the Waqf institution to improve their quality operation. Well, it's comprehensive, but it looks, well, to some people, seems to be complicated. Let's see in the next presentation by Brother Zainul that although it just looks complicated, but in fact it is applicable from the very simple Waqf institution to a very advanced one. So let me introduce Brother Zainul Abidin Tajeh from South Africa. He's a consulting partner in the firm Chartered Accountants, KG Razak and Associate. Holds honor degrees in accountancy, University of South Africa, and business science, University of KwaZulu-Natal, and education, and the masters in education, University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg. Okay, let me invite Brother Zainul. Good morning, Brother Zainul. I think it is early in the morning there, so I appreciate your availability after Fajr prayer and then joining us. And also interesting to me, particularly to see that you have a background in education, of course, and then it is also a very a right position for you to explain something difficult in a very easy way. So. In this session, inshallah, we will, expect you to, show the applicability and of the technical notes that we are developing. Time is yours, brother.
Okay. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all the participants out there and also to our esteemed panelists there, Dr. Bushori, Dr. Dadam, to yourself, Prof. Raditya, Dr. Iman, and also Dr. Hisham, who's there with us as well. So thank you to Bank Indonesia and to Badan Waqf Indonesia for hosting this very important webinar on Waqf. I think if our technical people there could just put up our slides, we could start with the presentation. But just to give you a context, I think what Brother Professor Raditya mentioned about the Waqf technical notes, Waqf core principles, I think it's quite important that we implement these in organizations and institutions because of the importance that the Waqf sector is gaining. And we've seen in the past that the issue of risk becomes very, very important because of various factors that Waqf institutions have failed, Waqf institutions or Waqfs have been nationalized, Waqf institutions have been, even due to colonization, have been usurped. There has also been issues about management failures, theft, fraud, etc. So the issue of risk management becomes very, very important to preservation and the successful growth of the Waqf institution and the Waqfs itself. So if we may continue, the next slide. So what I'm going to be discussing is basically a little bit about the nature of Waqf, a little bit about the corporate governance, because risk management falls very, very much squarely into corporate governance. And then we'll talk about the risk management and its application in Waqf institutions, inshallah. The next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think we don't need to go too much into detail with the issue of Waqf, but very, very briefly, Waqf assets are very, one may call them sacred assets. These are assets that have been donated by people that are there to benefit other people, to benefit either human beings or the environment or the poor and needy. So it's also now important that we also find that it's very deeply rooted in our Sharia. It is very important that we look at its origin from the Prophet ﷺ, his Sahaba, and throughout history, this has been a very important institution to provide for poverty alleviation and also socio-economic development. There are various types of Waqfs, could be social, commercial, it could be family Waqfs as well. So we need to understand that because of the sanctity and sacredness of this institution, it becomes important again for risk management. Very important is that the Waqf assets are supposed to be inalienable, irrevocable, and long-lasting wherever possible. Then you also have, there's an ecosystem about a Waqf. It doesn't stand alone. There are various stakeholders. They are beneficiaries, they are trustees, mutawallis, nazir. There's the government, there's volunteers maybe, there's staff, there's the tax collection. So we look at the ecosystem. And then of course, we also look at the management of Awqaf and generally how it's actually functioning to benefit the community. Could we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so in the whole issue of corporate governance, there must be effective leadership. So there's got to be a focus on the performance. There's got to be ethical leadership, and the focus there is on values, on truth and honesty in the way we function, and also to ensure that whoever the beneficiaries are, there's a trust in it, and we will ensure that that trust is actually maintained. And then a very important aspect that one of the recent Islamic economists, Dr. Asute, mentioned, that we also have a kind of ihsani culture within the organization. Then there's also the issue of compassion and how we treat people within the Waqf sector. Could we go to the next slide, please? I'm just giving you this as background. So in terms of the corporate governance, I think these are all the kind of values and ethical considerations that need to be provided in the organization, so that when we come to risk management, all these are actually implies that we need to ensure that we conduct ourselves in a way that is worthy of us as Muslims, and as the responsibility that has been given to the Nazir. And the Nazir could be an individual, could be an institution as well. So number one is accountability, transparency, honesty, the issue of being able to consult regularly with relevant stakeholders, the trust that is put onto us, that we conduct ourselves with excellence, with integrity, that what we say we're going to do, we do it. We look at when we promise people something, we fulfill those promises. We are mindful that we are accountable also to Allah. We operate as vicegerents of Allah, that we conduct ourselves in a manner that Allah has asked us to do so. There's sincerity, there's, when dealing with people's affairs, there's justice, compassion, and of course, due care in terms of how we operate. Could we go to the next slide, please? So some of the key objectives of the Nazir is the custodianship of the asset, or the waqf that has been put into his or her custody, or the institution's custody. The second objective would be the care and protection of the assets. Normally, from a Sharia perspective, the protection of the asset takes number one priority. So even if there are other needs, the protection of the asset will become more important. So when it comes to risk management, we need to be mindful about that. We need to be mindful about, as an objective, that wherever we're supposed to be in terms of distribution, that the impact of our distribution is maximized as well. There's no waste, there's no fraud, there's no cheating involved in it. That the asset that we acquire has got the productivity involved in it, that we extract as much as we can out of the asset in terms of income generation, in terms of asset growth, etc. Then, of course, we talk about donor and stakeholder sensitivity. So donors are our main oxygen of a Waqf institution, that donors provide us with funds or with assets, and we have to actually look after that. Then there, of course, there are other stakeholders that we have to be careful about. So because whatever action is taken will impact on other stakeholders as well. So for example, you may have the tax authorities. So if there's non-compliance with tax issues, it may impact negatively on the organization or the Nazir himself or herself. Okay, can we go to the next slide? Okay, so when we talk about the risk management, what are we talking about? So there's always uncertain future events that could influence both in a negative and positive manner. So for example, if we're buying a property as an investment with the cash that we've pooled from cash waqfs, for example, the property may be in a good position, it may have good returns, it may have, but it may also be negative in the sense that there may be possibilities of land invasions, or for example, in South Africa, we have that as a real problem, where there may be land invasions on farmlands. So why do we need to have this risk management? primarily, we need to avoid fraud, error, misstatement in financial statements, loss of the asset, corruption, and generally failure of the Waqf itself. And I think Professor Aditya went into quite a bit of detail into how we do this in terms of identification, measurement, mitigation, and monitoring. Who are we supposed to be looking after in terms of risk management? As I mentioned, it's really speaking the asset and the various stakeholders. What is risk management used for? To create and protect the value of the asset, to manage risks, to making decisions, strategic decisions, setting and achieving objectives, and improving performance. Could we go on to the next slide, please? Okay, so these are the kind of risk categories that were identified by activity, mobilization. So when we mobilizing funds, who are we mobilizing funds from? What type of funds are we coming? Is it legal funds that we are getting? Do we have to scrutinize the donor? Do we have to, or do we just accept anything? What type of asset do we acquire from that person? We've had instances where the asset donated, which we call perhaps sometimes a toxic asset, that it has got more problems than benefit that may come out of that asset. Then we talk about the management of the asset, distribution, the risk of the commercial risks involved, the social risks involved, investments, as I mentioned, and non-investment. Of course, people risks in terms of who we employ, which volunteers we get, and of course, what type of projects that we are going to be implementing. Is it a beneficial project? Is it something that is going to be providing sufficient impact? Is it a wasteful project? Is it something that will provide the benefit to an individual, or would it be beneficial to a community? So we need to actually, in terms of all our activities, look at all these type of risks in general. And I think, again, Professor Raditya has given quite a bit of detail in that as well. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, these were the types of risks that were spoken about as well. So when we, for example, counterparty risk, where we outsourcing, for example, we outsourcing investments, what type of risks are we identifying there? How are we going to measure the risk? Are we doing a due diligence on the party themselves? Are they able to provide the service that we want them to do? What is their particular background? The country transfer risk, we're talking about if there's, for example, the issue about within the country itself, what's the political scenario? What's the economic scenario? We've had, for example, a situation where our exchange rate, for example, was in 2008, 2010, say 7 Rand to a dollar. And now it's sitting at almost 17 Rand to a dollar. We were going to take a loan from the Islamic Development Bank. And at that time, if we had taken it, and the repayment had to be in dollars, so we would have to pay double the amount of rands in South African rand terms, or double or triple the amount if we had to pay the same amount in dollars. So there's always that issue. So we need to look at all these risks, which I think whether the financial or non-financial, whether it's about in terms of market, in terms of our credit, how shall we say, liquidity. Do we have sufficient liquid assets to be able to provide for beneficiaries? Are we receiving sufficient profits in terms of the investments that we're making for the kind of benefits that we have to distribute. In terms of distribution, are we distributing it to the correct people? Sometimes your donor has specified very clearly that the proceeds need to be distributed, or that the usufruct needs to go for education purposes, or it may have to go for mosques, for example. Are we actually fulfilling the wishes of the donor? Because that becomes a very important Sharia requirement, and all of these have these kind of risks. In fact, all of them would probably have a Sharia compliance risk as well. A very important one today is the issue of a going concern. So, for example, during the COVID period, many businesses, properties have actually reduced in terms of rental collections. Lots of businesses have closed down, particularly here in South Africa as well. The stock market actually collapsed as soon as the COVID came in. So it may affect Waqf institutions as well in terms of their foreseeable future. Will they be able to continue operating in the foreseeable future?
Kindly find it. Your time is 5 minutes left, please.
Okay, I'm almost done. Okay, so the next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, we've been through these 4 different types of identifications. Can you go on to the next slide, please? Okay, this, in terms of controls, I think this is quite an important one as well, that we have part of the risk management, the whole issue of internal controls, and how internal controls will help us to identify, monitor, and mitigate risks. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so in terms of where the risk management should be applied, is it all Waqf institutions? Should it be only in state-controlled institutions? Should it be on family institutions, on community-based NGOs, in corporates? And I think that this should happen across the board. Depending on the size of the institution, I think it could become very complicated as well. But I think it's always necessary to keep it simple, and especially when we're looking at community-based organizations and family institutions, risk management becomes important. In terms of state-controlled and larger ones, I think we need to really go the whole hog in terms of implementing the entire risk management system, and the one that has now been done, this technical notes, will be a great resource. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Okay, so some of the people that are involved and the types of risk management that need to come into play, and the different sort of categories of people. Number one, we need a Sharia board or a panel of advisors. Smaller organizations can just have a panel of advisors. Sharia advisors can become very expensive. You need to have auditors, like we have in South Africa and many parts of the world, external auditors and internal auditors. Then you need to have a number of corporate governance committees. The audit committee that has the oversight of financial reporting and the audit, the risk governance committee that has oversight of all the risks that the organization or the Nazir may encounter, social and ethical risks that are involved as well, people risks, the honesty and dishonesty and how we're dealing with people, sustainability of the organization, how long will it be able to sustain itself, are the assets sustainable as well, what type of assurances do we need takaful, do we need other kinds of insurances to ensure that the assets are well protected. How about our information technology? Is that up to speed? Are we be able to provide all the necessary information, keep the necessary data? Are we doing performance evaluations in the organization as well? And of course, having an investment committee that only is dedicated to looking after investments and all the risks associated with it. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so what are the benefits of these risk management? I think number one, for us, it builds trust and confidence amongst all stakeholders. There's better growth prospects. Success breeds success, builds a healthy and happy organization. If all these risk management principles are put into place, it helps achieve the broader objectives of the organization. It makes us more efficient and effective, and generally creates a very positive attitude and positive outlook for the whole Waqf sector as well. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just a diagram of the kind of ecosystem that we may find, and this would be internal. For example, you've got volunteers, we've got trustees, we have donors, staff, we have the beneficiaries, mutawallis, partner organizations, founders of the trust, the broader community, service providers, Sharia and legal advisors, our auditors. So these are all part of a Waqf ecosystem and stakeholders that need to be protected and be careful. Any misdemeanor, fraud, anything can affect the entire organization if something goes wrong with any one of them. It will, partners may not want to associate with us any longer. Can we go to the next slide? Also to do with our stakeholders, the entire NGO sector, banks, the international connections that we may have, the broader community, our religious sector, the taxmen, the governing bodies like Badan Waqf Indonesia, or in our case, the High Court, may also impact on the viability of the organization. We could actually be closed down if there's any fraud or misdemeanor that takes place. Could we go to the next slide? Okay, I'm basically almost finished, but I just thought that we just refer back to these technical notes on risk management. These are available. There's also other documents like the ISO 31000, which have been mentioned, also International Standard Organization on risk management, lots of other documentation on the application of risks. Next slide, please. Okay, these are also documents that need to be provided at policy level, frameworks, risk management compliance standards, and risk management compliance guidelines. And hopefully these technical notes that have been provided will be used and will be, I think, very beneficial to all our organizations. And I think this is probably my last slide, and hopefully it has been insightful and that it has been educational as well. Hopefully we are able to apply these risk management principles. So Jazakallah khairan, thank you very much everybody for listening. Shukran, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Thank you very much, Brother Zaino, for a very comprehensive but easy to catch, to understand for everybody. It matches with your background as the educator of, of people. Okay, in the next session, I would like to invite Bapak Imam Teguh Saptono. He is a President Director of Hamas Sharia Finance and President Director of Global Waqf Corporation, ACT. Previously, he was also a President Director of BNI Sharia, and very much contributing to the launch of the Kas Waqf Link Sukuk. Dr. Imam holds the bachelor degree from Bogor Agricultural University IPB from social economic, and then postgraduate again from IPB Magister Management, and then doctorate degree from IPB, so loyal to IPB. Alhamdulillah. Please welcome Dr. Imam.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Imam. And as your background as previously from banking, inshallah, in this session, we would like to hear from you the impact. What would be the impact of the technical notes? Time is yours.
Okay, sure. In this occasion, I will representing the regulators of the Waqf, Badan Waqf Indonesia or Indonesian Waqf Board. And the summary is the completion of the technical notes of the WCP is the main ingredients for the Indonesian Waqf Board to take further steps. So I will explain the material related with that. Good morning to all participants, speakers, and committee on the 7 ISEF. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Bank Indonesia for inviting me to this prestigious forum. I feel very honored and proud to be standing among the prominent speakers with their expertise and whose spirit is extraordinary in advancing the world of Waqf. On this occasion, next please. On this occasion, I will share and discuss 4 main issues. The first is the background that includes the role of Waqf and its performance in supporting the economic progress of the Ummah. The second point is related to the unique and challenging profile of Waqf in Indonesia, while the third is the importance of risk management in the management and development of Waqf assets. And the last but not least is a concluding description of the roadmap of Waqf ecosystem. I will try to deliver these 4 points briefly and by pointing out the main points only. Next, please. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to have a throwback to 100 of years ago. Historically, fact shows that Waqf play an important role in the rise or fall of the glory of Islamic civilization. Even in its time, Waqf had formally become an element of state finance. A number of important facilities for the community have been built by Waqf funds, such as bridges, railways, hospitals, universities, clean water installation, and even the armed forces. History also records the role of Waqf when a nation experiences a budget deficit. Back then, even when the banking system is not yet developed, Waqf institutions are already active in providing financing to both the public and private sectors. Going back to the present time, there are big questions that arise. What's wrong with the development of our Waqf system? And why does it seem that Waqf is losing its strength and superiority? It is becoming a task for all of us, and especially regulators, to restore the glory of Waqf as one of the pillars of the economy of Ummah. Next, please. In practice, each country has a different pattern of their institutional arrangement for Waqf. Some are centralized, where there is only one Nazir, which is quasi of state, while some others have decentralized system in each of the country, provincial, or even smaller region. In the case of Indonesia, the Waqf institution is autonomous and established from the communal or grassroots movement. This phenomenon may be a form of remains from the colonial era, where colonial government ignored the role of Islamic social finance and treated it only as a complementary and not a part of the economic mainstream. As a result, Nazir are very numerous, spread out across the nation, operating traditionally and being brought up from generation to generation, with high disparities of capacity between the Nazirs. This occurrence is limiting Nazir ability to manage Waqf asset and the variety of asset managed, which is dominated by land, and to build as mosque, musalla, graveyard, or madrasah. It also influenced the decreasing interest of potential waqif for executing waqaf, making the waqaf sector less and less attractive in the eyes of its stakeholders. Next, please. The differences also occur in the implementation of waqaf in each country, where it depends heavily on the ijtihad and mazhab it adheres to. The situation must be seen as beneficial flexibility of waqaf, meaning that waqaf is resilient and is able to answer the current economic challenges of the ummah. Furthermore, the innovation of waqaf assets has become increasingly sophisticated. Where it was originally only popular in the form of land, now waqaf asset can be found in the form of cash, both permanent and temporary, stock portfolio, copyright and patents, insurance premium, and many more. Continuous development in waqaf sector leads to the emergence of the competency gap between existing nazir and demand for increasingly innovative and diverse waqaf asset management. One of the most important issues that must be looked for is related to the culture and risk management. Okay, next please. Moving on the second point, the following slide show the profile and condition of Indonesian waqaf sector. We divide it into 5 major elements. The first element concerned about regulation. It must be admitted that the waqaf regulation in Indonesia is a bit delayed. The new Waqaf law was passed in 2004, followed by the establishment of Indonesian Waqaf Board in 2006. In its journey, this law has been considered lagging behind, where many things must be harmonized and synchronized, especially the law related to other regulation, i.e. banking law, tax law, limited liability, and etc. On the other hand, the resource in Indonesian Waqaf Board are also limited. The second element is society. The result of the survey on zakat and waqaf literacy in 2020 showed that the literacy of waqaf is still low, far below zakat. This is because the focus of socialization and the education curriculum has not provided an optimal portion for waqaf and still dominated by zakat, infak, and sadaqah. The following elements are waqaf asset that are generally dominated by land, and it is even recorded as one of the largest in the world, with more than 400,000 hectares of waqaf land. But those are experiencing an underinvestment. In parallel, modern waqaf assets are starting to develop, such as cash waqaf, stock waqaf, insurance premium waqaf, and etc. The fourth element is nazir. There are thousands of nazir who were brought up and operate traditionally with limited capacity, insufficient knowledge of risk management, and poor awareness on transparency and reporting. And the final element is the increasing number of maquf alai or beneficiaries, both terms of geographical distribution and quantity, with increasing critically in assessing the programs is being implemented. Next, please. Ladies and gentlemen, with this in mind, through an initiation by Bank Indonesia, Badan Wakaf Indonesia, IRTI-IDB, a Wakaf Core Principles document has been produced. It is intended as a guideline for regulators and Wakaf institutions, both domestically and internationally, in setting risk management standards at both operating and supervisory level. In parallel, Badan Wakaf Indonesia, together with the Ministry of Religion and Wakaf stakeholders, i.e. Nazir Association, academics, scholars, and regulators, have formulated 37 basic competencies, which is related to Nazir key activities. In the future, the said competencies must be fulfilled by the professional Nazir in Indonesia. This decision has just been recognized through a convention that was carried out a week ago, guided by the Standards for Determining National Competencies or SKKNI. Next, please. After the prerequisite of Nazir competency standard fulfilled, the establishment of supporting institution will be followed, consisting of training institution and certification and administration institution. The role of the Waqf core principle, especially the technical note of WCP document, will be the main material that will be attached to every item of competencies that will be sought and tested to prospective Nazir in Indonesia. This Nazir certification program is expected to be able to improve the competency standard and ability of Nazir in carrying out its mandate in managing Waqf asset professionally. In turn, Waqf asset will be developed optimally. Public trust will increase, and the role of Waqf in supporting the economic growth of the people is increasing significantly. Moreover, for the Nazir profession, the existence of certification will also add pride to the profession of Nazir. Next, please. Although it is still the form of blueprint and still undergoes on discussion stage, in the future, the Nazir certification process will be carried out in stages according to its complexity and asset class. In general, there are 3 dimensions that will be used as reference, namely the dimension of knowledge, skill, and attitude. Attitude dimension in the main requirement, and there is a minimum level that must be complied by Nazir at all levels. Meanwhile, for the other dimension, knowledge and skill, they adjust to the level certification. For simple social asset, i.e. graveyard or musala, the required certification is at basic level. The more complex the asset that are going to be managed, the level of knowledge and skill capacity must be increased. Next, please. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have arrived at my last point. The Waqf ecosystem roadmap that is shown in this slide, the ultimate goal of all our efforts is to build a healthy Waqf ecosystem that is able to combine the strength of social and commercial Islamic finance, meaning that the cooperation and synergy among related institutions such as Islamic Bank, Zakat Infak Waqaf Sadaqah Institution, Ministry of Finance, OJK, and etc. is the key to success. From the synergy and well-managed instrument and value, the benefit that could be achieved is the welfare and dignity of the Ummah and assurance for the afterlife. In building this ecosystem, the paradigm of thousands of Nazir must be changed, including the transformation of competition to cooperation, or from musabaqah to muawanah. Waqf assets, which were originally dominated by land, are going to be differentiated and developed into other types of assets, such as cash waqaf as well as other financial instruments, with the aim of involving as many waqif as possible from all circles, especially millennial generation. No less important is the involvement of technology. In this case, the digitization of Waqf, which make it easier to make Waqf payment and its monitoring, for example, through blockchain technology. Next. Okay, that is all from me today. I'm hoping what I shared today will encourage us to seek answers, therefore generating new thoughts and ideas to restore Waqf as a pillars of the Ummah economy. Thank you very much for opportunity. I'm very grateful for the time and space that has been given to me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. Thank you very much, Dr. Imam. So we have already got the presentation from 3 prominent speakers. Before I, extend and also provide a floor to question, I would like to invite Dr. Hisham Daftardar to give, short comments on the presentation. Dr. Daftardar, please. Can you hear me, Dr. Dar? All right. While waiting, Dr. Dar to, because I think there's some technical, I would like to combine a lot of questions into 4 major questions and will be addressed to 3 of you. The question number 1, I think, is addressed to Professor Raditya. The question is about the macro perspective on how Waqf sector can improve the competitiveness of a nation, and particularly, during this pandemic COVID-19 and what have happened in the future. And then number 2 is addressed to Brother Zainul. The question is about whether this technical notes is applicable to a very simple Waqf institution and how to make it simple. Comprehensive is good, but if it is too complex, it will provide harms rather than benefit. And then second question for Brother Zainul, do we need to also include political risk? And then how to maintain the preference of the potential Waqif and also Sharia compliance. And the question addressed to Dr. Imam, number 1 is how close the Waqf operation to banking operation? Is risk management for banking operation still relevant to Waqf operation? And what makes the differences? And secondly, how these technical notes and a Waqf core principle can provide a mutual recognition between Waqf sectors and other Islamic general financial sectors, and even for the production sectors. I think it refers to your experience, Doctor, when you are constructing the cash Waqf link sukuk. May I take the opportunity to get the answer from Prof. Radit, please?
Badadan, can you hear me? Badadan, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for the questions. You asked about how is the micro sector competitiveness, right? So I remember the writing by Professor Murat Zivats. He's a Turkish and he's a historian, and his expertise on Waqf. He said in one of his writings is that in order for you to help the government in avoiding riba, then develop Waqf. This is, he put that statement in the abstract in one of his writings. So I'm curious about his statement. So I read throughout the paper and finally I agree with him. He said that, well, if the society is generous enough to support the social sector by donating the land into Waqf so that the people can build with the cash Waqf, the schools, the hospital, and so on, that will be using the society's funds. It means that that sector is actually the sector which is catered by government, but in this case is covered by Waqf by society. So if a lot of people, Prof. Murad says that if a lot of people contribute to donate whatever assets into Waqf for social purposes, education and health and so on, then the burden of the government will be less. And I think this is the right time for us to get together with the government so that Waqf the government allow or encourage the society to develop Waqf, so much so that the sector which is initially fulfilled by only government can also fulfill by the society. So he said that if initially government, this is according to Prof. Murad, if with regard to avoiding riba, if government is borrowing from overseas because of the deficits, budget deficits, of course, borrowing from overseas is interest-based, right? However, if the society is giving a lot of contributions for social and economic purposes in the form of Waqf, that deficit can be going down, and it could be in a surplus deficit. If the surplus deficit, then no need for the government to borrow from overseas using interest-based funds, right? So in this case, Waqf can eliminate us for the taking riba. And this is exactly one of the verses in Al-Quran, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Yamhaqullahu riba wa yurbi sadaqat, right? So if people contributing many on sadaqah, right? So riba will going down. So that is the, I think, the macro perspective. But again, macro is coming from the micro, right? If currently, you know that, I think I try to also answering what has been the questions to Pa Imam. With regard to the small medium enterprise, where the finance institutions, where the financial institutions normally regard SME is the high risk, right? And therefore, the financing given to them, normally the profit rate is so high, right? But if we can take the sources coming from the cash Waqf, whereby it can be considered as a low cost of fund or maybe zero cost of fund, that can really help the SME, because the funds accepted by the Islamic financial institutions in the form of cash Waqf, they don't need to return back to the Waqf for the Waqf permanent, right? So if the Islamic financial institution is distributing this cash Waqf for the social, for the small medium enterprise, which normally they are considered as a high risk, then we can lower down the rate, because this is coming from the cash Waqf. If many, especially in Indonesia, whereby GDP is contributing very much from the small medium enterprise, I think this is a good way for the case of Indonesia to develop the cash Waqf, so much so that this small medium enterprise is growing very well, which later on also develop the or increase the GDP. So I think that's my answer, Pak Dadang.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think it is very enlightening. Coming to question number 2 to Brother Zainul, please.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I think talking about the application to simple institutions, I think one needs to look at the kind of factors that can influence this kind of application to smaller institutions. The smaller institutions we're referring to, like NGOs in particular. Some NGOs could be very small. It could be just one person who starts up an organization and very dominating by one individual, to larger institutions which has a proper board, has competent people. So we need to look at those kind of factors as to what can influence the applicability of a good risk management system. So the one factor is having qualified and competent people. If we don't have the necessary skills, if people are not attuned to the mission and direction and understanding of the whole Waqf system, they don't have the necessary passion for it, I think that could negatively impact on the organization. Secondly, I think cost is an important factor. The smaller organizations may not be able to afford a Sharia board. They may not be able to afford internal auditors. They may not be able to afford, all the kind of external mitigation factors that one needs to implement. They may not be able to afford all of that. So cost will be a factor. Of course, Sharia is fundamental. So whatever the size of the organization, Sharia would necessarily be involved, and they would have to be some kind of oversight. So in the case, for example, in South Africa, we don't really have an oversight body. There may be individuals and lots of volunteers that may come on board to assist organizations. You may be able to outsource a lot of assistance. And I mean, we take our own example that we have a lot of volunteers, professionals that have skills, investment, business people, Sharia scholars that provide that kind of assistance. So the Nadir or the Mutawallis have to make sure that they are able to outsource competent people and competent skills. For example, we've just had a webinar on internal control last week, actually. So small organizations, very simple things like cash collections. Do you have proper receipt books? In terms of banking, does the receipt book collection match up with the amount that you banked? So simple things like that can be done in smaller organizations, and in fact, it should be done across the board. Where there's, very few people in an organization, it becomes very difficult to segregate duties. So the executive director may also do banking, or may also be approving an investment, or maybe approving a project. So I think the smaller the organization, the more riskier it becomes. Okay, there's a higher risk with smaller organizations of theft, of fraud, of misstatement, and we've had this experience where in very small organizations and over generations, people tend to actually even believe that the asset belongs to them. So now having now a kind of a standard that is now becoming more public, and where people are able to relate to kind of standards that are applicable to organizations, then maybe perhaps one will need to have a situation where you can, in your financial statements, you need to actually make a declaration that you have applied to some extent these Waqf core principles, or risk management technical notes, or you are complying with certain external standards, because that will make you a much more like a risk averse and a risk conscious organization. You need to have like a good panel of advisors to be able to implement these systems as well. The second question about political risk, I think, yes, it's quite an important one, especially for people like in South Africa. We've had an instance, of course, initially Islam was a banned religion, so we were not even allowed to have any property. We didn't even have property rights. But since 1994, those property rights are there. But who knows what the next government is going to be? Who knows, for example, we've had instances like in Bosnia, where a lot of mosques were demolished. Now recently we've just heard that in Angola, they banned Islam. They want to demolish mosques. They want to, disband various organizations. We've had instances in Egypt where under the Sisi government, there's been lots of closures of credible NGOs and so forth. So I think there will be a political risk involved in any country. Although, and historically, we do know that due to nationalization, due to colonization, a lot of properties were actually confiscated in Algeria and other parts of the world.
Naam.
So I think the political risk will
Ahwe.
always be there, and we need to guard against that. Where we can have constitutional rights of protection, I think we should cherish that. We do have that protection now in South Africa, but if there are constitutional changes and you get the wrong people coming into power, then of course we are going to have problems. But for now, I think the trajectory seems to be quite open and positive. The people are beginning to invest a lot into the Waqf sector, and people have more confidence in the country in that sense. But I think we'll always have that kind of risk. So, yeah. Sorry, the third question was?
It's about the compliance risk, Sharia compliance risk.
Okay, so I think, in terms of, I think the major Sharia compliance risk comes about when you're trying to invest your funds into either properties or equities or in all these financial assets. I think that's where a major issue comes in. A major issue comes in also in the appointment of a nadir or appointment of people, service providers and so forth. The Sharia compliance comes in where you're dealing with projects and how you are funding various projects and whether those projects are Sharia compliant. Now, well, thanks to the emergence of Islamic banking and the Islamic finance sector, that there are, for example, in South Africa now, Sharia compliant banks, Islamic banks. You've got the Al Barakah Bank, and you've got various unit trust funds in the stock market, like the Oasis Crescent Fund, that are Sharia compliant. They have various Sharia scholars on their boards. They can probably afford all the expensive Sharia scholars on their panels and on their boards. So when it comes to also mobilization of assets, so what type of asset are you actually acquiring? Are there is the asset, for example, infested with bottle stores and illegal occupations? Somebody trying to get rid of their property onto you, which has also happened. We've had examples of that as well, where it may be a Sharia compliant property, but it's got adverse effects on the organization, and it may deplete your resources as well, because now you're making somebody else's problem your problem, and whether that is Sharia compliant or not is another matter. But I think in our case, we have a Sharia panel of advisors and international as well. So if we have any other issues, we can always get that understanding. The other issue with Sharia compliance, I think, is that not everyone, not all the Sharia scholars are very well versed with the whole Waqf sector. So it means that there needs to be a lot of training involved with many Sharia scholars. It's good enough just to know the ritual rulings of Waqf, who can make a Waqf, what age you should be, and you should be of sane mind and body and all of that. But I think in terms of developmental goals and civilizational goals and so forth, I think that's where we need to have much more deeper understanding of the whole Waqf sector. So it makes it so the Sharia compliance becomes much more comprehensive rather than just on certain basic things.
All right. Thank you, brother. And then the last question before I will invite Dr. Hisham, maybe for Dr. Imam to explain the last question, please.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, the first question is related to how close the practice of Waqf is to business practice, especially in banking practices.
Yeah.
In my opinion, as proven by history, when the banking sector was not yet developed, the function of the banking system was mostly carried out by the Waqf institution, especially Waqf institution that run cash Waqf. I'm sure that at some point there will be convergences between Waqf institution and banking practices. Therefore, it is not strange that WCP or Waqf Core Principle and technical note of Waqf Core Principle have adopted many banking principles. In the future, Badan Waqf Indonesia also intends to amend the Waqf law to encourage Islamic banks to act as a nazir, as a nazir of cash Waqf. And then about the second question is the purpose of establishing. Sorry. Hello. Okay. The second question is about the purpose of establishing Waqf Core Principle technical notes is to assist the implementation of Waqf Core Principle at the operation level. So the implementation of the technical note of Waqf Core Principle will raise the competencies standard of the Nazir. The current condition of Nazir is often considered as a second-class player in the business environment. On the other hand, as Pak Dadang said, Nazir actually controls a giant resources, a giant potential resources that can be utilized by the business world in the mutual way. The asymmetric phenomena hinders the synergy between commercial and social funds that will be realized. At the end of the day, Waqf will return to be mainstream economy and play an important role to support the welfare of the economy. So, in short, the WCP will rise Nazir at par and have the same frequency as the business world, so that the synergies between commercial and social funds will be realized. That's all my explanation.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Imam. May I now invite Dr. Daftardar? I hope that technical difficulties has been overcome. Please, you have 5 to 7 minutes to give, as a member also of the technical notes working group. Please, Dr. Daftardar.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. I have just some general comments on the subject of Awqaf risk. We know that Awqaf have really not given sufficient priority to risk management, and worse still, they do not admit that they are ill-equipped to deal with unforeseen risks. A fundamental weakness in Awqaf is the idea or their notion that Awqaf is old and have survived through the ages, and that they have always been resilient to the vagaries of evil forces. But these days, resilience is more about flexibility and adaptability. Awqaf are less equipped for the new world and modern technology. This has, somehow passed them. Awqaf cannot be underprepared. Awqaf is really under the spotlight like never before, and it is essential that risk is recognized. There is damaged reputation is among the top perceived risks. Other risks include cybercrime, and this is very common these days. There are the risk of attracting the proper talent and the retention of this talent. There are risks also that are, there when Awqaf has to deal with the private sector. Awqaf cannot work in isolation from, working with the private sector. They have to develop properties, as we heard. They have to get finance. They have to deal with the developers. And so there should be contracts signed with the private sector. And this is where, you know, the details in the contracts is very important. Like when you are, especially when you are having these long-term agreements, like in, you know, BOT that extends sometimes to 30 and 40 years and even more in some cases. Who knows what is going to happen, you know, when you are doing the deal now, how the project is going to end up 20, 30 years from now, whether you will still have, you know, a viable project when Awqaf has to take it back. There is also the modality of, let's say, this diminishing musharaka or diminishing partnership, and that, you know, these diminishing partnerships, sometimes they do not diminish, you know, and you end up, you know, that Awqaf, you know, has permanent partnership with the, you know, with the private sector. And sometimes the majority of the ownership of the project end up with the private sector. For instance, you know, if Awqaf has a piece of land, I'll give an example. They have a piece of land, which is, let's say, worth, you know, $1 million. $1 million, it means you have to put a project on it for $2 or $3 million. So this $2 or $3 million is coming from the private sector, or from a contractor, or from a financier. Okay, so if we want to say who owns more of that project, it is not Awqaf. And if that project is going to extend for so many years, it means technically that Awqaf has, you know, the very minor, and Awqaf may not be able really to get back its project. And even if it does get it, you know, it will be an old and dilapidated project, which all you can do is bring a bulldozer and, you know, start all over again. And this way, you know, the beneficiaries or the mawquf alayhim will end up looking like being victims of, rather than beneficiaries of Awqaf. So all these things we have to you know, to consider, you know, and this is a major risk. Then we also have to think now about really the digital technology that is, you know, invading us. And this digital world is on Awqaf doorsteps. And the pressure is on the Nazirs really to respond. Awqaf should take steps to harness the influx of technology that they are witnessing. And this responsibility is on the Nazirs to realign Awqaf, you know, with the modern processes. There are responsibilities also on the Sharia scholars, on the legal people and the administrative processes, so they can make, you know, benefit to Awqaf from these advances such as blockchain and artificial intelligence and whatnot. So we are in a whole new world now. We cannot keep talking about, you know, the old methods. This is look back to historical practices, and you know, otherwise we will be left behind and will be vulnerable in Awqaf. This is what I have to add. Thank you
very much, Dr. Hisam.
Yes.
Very beneficial. So Alhamdulillah, because again, the time limits, I would like to reiterate two things first. We need to build the ecosystem. Awqaf is just an element in ecosystem. And then we need to do a brick by brick sort of effort to build a robust and formidable Waqf system. And inshallah, by having this program today, we can, disseminate our effort to everyone to get involved, be part of us in building the Waqf sector. Thank you very much again to all the panelists for a very contributive contribution to this program. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I will hand this over to the MC.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Dadang, for leading the discussion on technical notes of Waqf Core Principle for Risk Management. I would also like to thank our speaker, Professor Dr. Raditya Sukmana, Mr. Zainal Abidin, Dr. Imam Teguh Sabtono, as well as Mr. Hisham Daftarar, CPA PhD, and also Mr. M. Anwar Basori for opening the event earlier today. We would also like to thank our amazing participant who has been with us since the beginning of the event and for actively participating in the Q&A session. Now we have finally reached the end of our event, Public Exposure, Technical Notes of Waqf Core Principle for Risk Management. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. Hopefully it was a great, wonderful, and informative session for you as it was for all of us at the studio. Rani Didi Maurejo on behalf of ISEF 2020 committee to sign off and meet you on another ISEF event. ISEF, bring out halal in you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Pak Dadang. Thank you Dr. Zainul, Dr. Hisham, Pak Imam. Terima kasih Pak.
Terima kasih Prof. Pak Dadang.
Ya, Pak Dadang.